This episode is brought to you by the love of supporting independent film. Daniel here. I'm sure you've all heard people complaining about how they don't make anything original anymore. Just a bunch of sequels, prequels, reboots, remakes. Well, I recently wrote a feature film with my good friend Ian Rayburn called Deathmatch Dad. It's something original. It's a family drama that has ultra-violent deathmatch wrestling in part of it. So if that sounds like something you're interested in and want to see on the big screen, please help us out. We have started an Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign. There are multiple levels of contribution with multiple perks. Please check it out in the episode description. You know, if you're listening on your phone, it's probably there. If you're listening on a website, it's also there. So please click on the link and see how you can help us bring our film to the masses and make sure that we can pay everybody involved properly and pay for the locations that we need. Thank you very much for listening. Enjoy this episode about The Mandalorian.
Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
featured on that shelf.
Boom. Hey, look, it's Chapter 6, The Prisoner.
Yes.
Right away, I'm going to say this. This is oh my goodness, Odie. This is an interesting situation where Rick Famuyiwa has now directed my least favorite chapter and my favorite chapter.
So which one would be your least favorite?
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2, yeah, okay.
To be clear, I like all of the chapters.
Yes.
There's no chapter I'm like, "Boh, what a waste." It's
Right.
just that is my least favorite. It's for me that was the most cartoonish and
Yeah.
it's still fun and I was happy that he did it, but it's my least favorite. And now with The Prisoner, he's directed my favorite and he also has writing credit on. I think this is the only one without Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni having
I think
writing
so.
credits.
Yeah.
Because it's Christopher Loist and
Can't remember.
Yost, not
Yost. Yeah.
Christopher
Because I remember
Yost
like
and Rick
your last
Famuyiwa.
name's like the Blue Ranger's last
Yes.
name.
David Yost's brother, Christopher Yost.
Yeah.
No, they
Not actually.
no, not actually. Yeah, so him and Rick Famuyiwa have writing credits on this. Rick Famuyiwa directed it. Also, Rick Famuyiwa, Deborah Chow, and Dave Filoni are the X-wing pilots at the end, which I thought was cool.
Yeah. That was really, really fun.
Yeah,
I
I
love that they're getting away with all these like really fun cameos
Yeah,
and like
that's
guest stars
amazing.
are working really, really well, except for the lack of continuity. But
So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I
talked
think
about
if
that last
anyone
time. Yeah, for sure.
listened to last chapter, last episode of last chapter, you should definitely listen to that to get where I'm coming from when I say it's still disappointing that this is such an episodic show, but
well, where we're both coming from.
Yes.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
have that same issue too.
but now that I know that's
Yeah.
clearly what they're doing, I can just enjoy it one at a time.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed this chapter. It's got
Bill
obviously,
Burr.
Bill Burr.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about the cast in a second, but what I liked about it is we usually talk about how there's like one trope per chapter, but
Yes.
this one had like the heist, the like
jailbreak
reclaiming it, like
thing, yeah.
jailbreak, and then it turns into like a monster movie / slasher movie where
Yeah.
he's like hunting them down. Like it had, and then like even with that X-wing thing, like I feel like it just became like a Star Wars movie for a bit. As
Oh,
well.
yeah.
I was like, yeah, this is great. It's got everything.
It fused together with so many tropes that I realized that because I rewatched it this morning, and I was like, oh my god, they really pulled a lot of different elements in. It's not like the other episodes where or chapters where there's been like typically one trope
Yeah.
per chapter. This one fuses together a lot. So we're getting going now. I
and
think.
it's also the longest, which probably says something.
Yes.
Well, it's like it's the length of like an episode of Arrow or Flash or Supergirl.
Yeah.
So it's like regular TV length.
of like a 45-minute
Yeah,
broadcast
which
thing. Yeah, or 42
Probably
minutes.
says something that it's my favorite, and it seems like a full thing. But like,
Yes.
I think that's also just I really liked. I really like those tropes anyway in movies, and
Yeah.
I thought that they pulled. That's the thing; they always pull it off. It's just they were pulling off something that I really like.
Yes.
So it worked for me. But yeah, did you want to go through the cast?
I mean, we could go through the cast. I don't exactly have the cast list in front of me right now. 'Cause
So
I'm
the
finding it
people I
hard
remember,
yeah.
I wish I
Go
remembered.
on.
I'm gonna look up her name.
Yeah.
But she's from Game of Thrones and she's in other things. That's it. She was the species that's like Akosha, but I don't, or Akasha. What's her name? You know the one from Clone
The
Wars.
Twi'leks?
Yeah, is that what they're called? I
Twi'leks.
feel like that's what she said. That's what Bill Burr said, right? You crazy Twi'leks or something like that.
Yeah,
I
he
feel
called
like
them
that's
Twi's, but they're
Yeah.
Twi'leks. Ahsoka
Ahsoka.
Tano is a completely different
Not the
race.
same thing.
Not the
They
same
just
thing.
look the
no.
same to me.
They look
Well,
very
I'm
similar
very
to you,
racist.
but there's no. They're Twi'leks are blue and green.
Okay, I
typically
figured
in
it was different because I was like, I feel like Ahsoka's always played as like the good guy, and didn't seem like these were interesting. Also, they had the fangs, which I thought was different as well.
Right. Yeah. No, these
So
are
you're
Twi'leks.
right, yeah.
They're yeah.
I didn't doubt you, but
Yeah.
sorry, that was Natalia Tena
Okay.
playing Jian.
That's the sister.
Yes,
Right, yeah.
yeah.
With
Who
the
also used to
love
be she
Connection
used
with Mando.
to, Mark Boone Jr.
Yep.
Who I mean, for me, from Batman Begins when he has that amazing line of
Yep.
like, I've got kids to feed. Well, you don't like falafel? I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and
Good
also
point.
Sons of
Crooked
Anarchy.
Yes,
Yeah.
obviously. That's his like big
That's
thing.
his big thing. Yeah.
But
Always love seeing
as a
him,
Batman
for sure.
fan,
Yeah.
I was like, Bill Burr, obviously, who famously made fun of Star Wars a lot. But
Yes.
I said at the beginning of this, I like that it's like the actors that are coming in aren't like, you wouldn't think he doesn't like Star Wars watching his performance.
No,
in
you
this.
wouldn't.
Like, and that's what I like, is that it's
Yeah.
like he is doing like, this is probably his best role I've ever seen him in, and I've seen him in other things.
To be fair, I
Not
haven't seen him in
stand-up.
many other things.
Well,
I
he's-
was just one of those people that's like, oh no, I have seen him in
because
TV
he's in
stuff.
Better Call Saul. Is he-
I haven't been caught up with Better Call Saul, to be perfectly honest. But
or is it Breaking Bad? Maybe it's just Breaking Bad that he's in.
no, that's another.
Yeah, he's in Breaking Bad.
Is he?
Because
That's-
he is like he
that's
is
actually him?
Tied, yeah, he's tied
Oh.
into Saul and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
That's
thought
why
it
I
was
thought he was
another
in
actor
Better
that
Call Saul.
looked very similar
No,
to
no.
Bill Burr. Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. He
Yeah.
is a good actor, but I'm saying like I really liked him in this. Like,
yeah.
I think it's elevated by knowing he doesn't necessarily like Star Wars and actively make fun. I feel like people make fun of it as a point. Like,
Oh, a lot.
I don't think he like cares. I don't think he's like, oh, I fucking hate Star Wars. I think he just did that because it was probably funny in the moment.
Yeah.
But like, his performance in this is elevated knowing that it's not like this guy is a fan. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, I get to use these like.
It's not like a
some-
Simon Pegg situation.
Yeah, like,
where
sometimes
it's like,
people
oh,
are like-
he's having fun. He wants to be here. Bill
No,
Burr
he's
is
just
like,
like-
no, he's just a professional dude. That's
Yeah,
just like
and he
really,
kills it.
yeah,
Well,
he's
everyone
good
does.
at it. Yeah.
Clancy Brown was what's his name? Wow, why did I Bulge? Why did I forget it? Berg.
The devil dude.
Yeah, Hellboy.
Yeah.
Clancy Brown, who's the voice of Lex Luthor and
Yes.
our childhood Batman, Superman stuff. He's in other things, but honestly,
This is
if I
what
can
we
relate
remember
things to
him from.
Batman, I'm
We
gonna
gotta
do it.
we gotta stay on brand, right? We're,
Exactly.
geekdom.
I finally learned how to pronounce this guy's last name, Richard Ayoade. I always thought it was Ayoade,
Yeah.
but it's Richard Ayoade. Before this episode, I looked up him saying his own
Yeah.
name because I feel like, sure, you can just assume whoever's interviewing him looked it up, but if I see him saying it, I can be like, okay,
Now my assumption is that he voiced the droid.
yes,
Yeah.
zero.
Yeah, zero. Okay. Because I'm like the whole time I'm like, which one is he? And then I reheard. I'm like, oh yeah, he must be the droid.
Yep.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Is
Good
that?
stuff.
I mean, there's other people.
There's other people like the brother.
Yeah, but I don't. I mean,
I mean,
Ishmael Cruz Cordova. I don't know.
don't know who that is.
I even looked him up, and I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know him. I've seen Mary Queen of Scots, and I don't remember him in
Right.
it. That's pretty. Oh, he's like the main bad guy in that movie, Miss Bala, with what's her face? What? She's like Jane the Virgin, Gina Rodriguez. She had a movie
Cool.
at the beginning of this year. He's like the main bad guy.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, I'm not really familiar with him, but I love Richard Ayoade, who's also a director and an actor.
Yes.
Clancy Brown.
IT crowd.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think I've seen the first season of, but not anything
Oh,
else
you,
from.
you should
I
watch
know.
that full
Oh, I
series.
know.
That's a good.
It's funny
good
because
show, yeah.
they remade it and then just brought him back anyway. They made it for American audiences with
Did they really?
yeah, with Joel McHale from Community and
I have to check that out. It must
there's
be
only
terrible.
one episode.
Yeah,
No,
it
it's
must
only
be
one.
awful. Yeah.
but they brought Richard Ayoade to play the same character because they're like, You're just good, so
Yeah.
you can just.
He
do
was
it.
perfect as Moss.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I just don't know how that would translate to an American.
And I think
thing,
it was
but, like,
Jessica St. Clair played the female character, who I know from a lot of podcasting. She's
Right.
got her own podcast. She's had 2 TV shows in her own right. Yeah, she's in things, like, if you look her up. But
I'll have to take your word for it.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
the point is, this was probably my favorite cast.
Yes.
And that was just, and I also, full disclosure, when the trailers came out, all the imagery I liked came from this episode or this chapter. So I was like, once I realized it was going to be this chapter, I was like, oh, fucking sick. I'm in for a good time. And it did not disappoint.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the cast. The thing I really, really liked about this one is that the cast, the guest cast, was involved much earlier this time around as opposed to previous
like
episodes.
reveals and stuff.
Or yeah, like other chapters where it's like, oh, you get one scene. No, they get like the whole episode.
Yes.
And that's what I really, really liked about this episode too. There was a lot of chemistry between all the actors and all that kind of stuff. It worked really, really well. And it was just a fun and amazing episode. It was really good.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I guess the details of it are, we don't know why, but obviously the last line of the episode, or the last line of the chapter, makes it seem like this was some sort of like plan that Mando wasn't too sure of, went through with it anyway, where he was going to talk to his old friends, and then he gets convinced to go break someone out of jail.
Yep.
And then obviously they turn on him.
Well, it's all for money.
Yeah,
It's just all for money.
No, I don't think this was for money. This was just they wanted to kill him because they're
Mm-hmm.
losing money. Because the whole plan
Yes.
was either they lock him on there, or when they come back, they give him the money and then shoot him out of the sky. So they would have lost. They wouldn't
would've
gain
preferred,
anything.
Yeah, they would have preferred to keep him on the ship, obviously.
Yes, they would have liked that where they don't lose money. But no, they weren't going to make any money.
Yeah, but
All they were going to do.
The whole purpose of his motivating, Mando's motivating
He
factor
needs money.
here was he needed money.
Yes, but they were like, we're going to get him back for the time that he left us.
Correct.
On a ship or on
Well,
a planet.
it seems like he screwed them over. There was definitely history there in the
Yes.
past and all that kind of stuff.
So so that happens,
Mm-hmm.
and then he just gets them back
Right.
immediately, and it's amazing.
It's just
some
cool
of the best
to
visuals ever.
Yeah, it's cool because this is essentially bounty hunting without the guild and seeing how ruthless it actually is, and I really, really like that. So the idea that the guild exists and they're like, no, we got this standard and all that kind of stuff is like, okay, cool, but you're bounty hunters, so how bad can that standard be? And then now you're seeing,
Yeah.
the amount of double crosses. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I liked. Why am I forgetting this guy's name again? Berg. I think it's Berg. Hellboy.
Yeah.
I like that they're like really like teased out how strong that guy really is.
Yeah.
Because at first, the first time was like when Mando has to take all the droids out himself, and I was like, I didn't honestly know if they were gonna screw him over, so I was just like, maybe they're just like, oh, cool, like because it looked like Xi'an was gonna help.
Yeah.
And Bill Burr was like, no, let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
I didn't know what his actual plan was, but I guess now that I'm watching it the second time, I'm like, maybe he was just hoping he died.
Well,
He's like, like if he dies, it's fine. But I think
the first time I watched that through, like when he was like, hold on 1 second, I got the impression that he's like, no, I really want to see what this guy's all about because the Mandalorian, like,
yes, he
brings that
was
up. Like,
dubious
he's like,
about
yeah.
the stuff. But
And-
I liked that like when he has to like actually fight
Mm-hmm.
Hellboy. It's like I was happy with the ending being that he just chops his head off of that. When he lifts it up, I was like, "Fuck!" Like, all right,
he
like
just pulls him down to the gate. It's awesome.
Well, that part, but I'm saying like,
Oh, the doors.
They do
Yeah.
all the fighting, and I'm like, this. Any trick he pulls out of his sleeve now, I'm fine because he was throwing everything at this guy. Like he did
Yes.
the like whistling birds, he did the like flamethrowers, and like he was just laughing. Hellboy was just like laughing it off,
Yeah.
and then he closes the doors on his head, and I'm thinking, all right, fair enough. Like he's dead, and then he just lifts it
squats
back up.
He just
And I
squats
was
the whole
like,
thing back up. I'm like,
that is
what?
impressive.
That's
Like,
awesome.
I was
Yeah.
like, all right, man. Like this guy deserves it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I liked the that whole like Bill Burr like holding him back. It's like, let me check this thing out because like this is one thing I wanted to ask you. Bill Burr's delivery on the ship and I forget the name of the ship, but when he's like, well, apparently Mandalorians when he said that like in that whole thing. If I close my eyes, I can hear Rocket Raccoon saying that. You know, it sounded so much like Rocket to me. I'm like, huh, this is interesting. But of course, obviously not. Well, whether or not it was, but it was just like a cool little thing. I'm like, hey, I wonder if anyone else thinks this.
I didn't think of it, but
You know. So hit us up if you think.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, or just close your eyes next time when you.
What's his
rewatch
name
this.
again? Mayfeld.
Mayfeld.
Yeah.
Yep.
I also there's two things I feel like they made. Well, he made the Canto Bite reference. Which,
Yes, he did.
Great, but then he also like is like, "What are you under there? Like a gun?" And I was like, and then he full on just did a Jar Jar Binks impression. I was
Yep.
like, "Holy shit! I can't believe they went there with that."
Yeah.
And then Sheehan makes fun of him and she goes, "This is the way."
Yeah.
I was like, I like these jokes that
these jokes are fun.
like they're really sticking to the man with these making fun of lore jokes.
Yeah, and they're also like they're such good jokes because they're so meta too.
Yeah.
This is why like I like the show in so many different ways because it does tie together so many aspects of the Star Wars universe. Even though like when you and I talk about like what makes a Star Wars movie, there has to be an element of the Force. In this one, there's very little Force involved,
But it's still
but
a
it
pretty
feels Star Wars because
important-
he ties it in with the lore. As well as the tropes with the X-wings and all that kind of stuff.
So what I would say is this episode more than the last like 2 or 3 still really focused on the Force because
Yes.
it's the like
The baby, the child.
I'm assuming he doesn't have his powers anymore because
Child?
Yeah, because at the same time that Mando is playing like basically the slasher monster
Yep.
on the ship, Zero is doing that to Baby Yoda, who could probably just force push him or something. And then there's that shot where Zero finds him and clearly he's going to shoot him, and the baby puts his hand up like that, but it's Mando who saves him. And he even looks at the Baby Yoda looks at his hand like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What just happened there? I think this is still like playing on like they extracted whatever they extracted, and maybe he's got to like learn to get it back or something.
I see what you mean. Like they've extracted the midichlorians, and then now he's like whether or not he gets to build it back up or whether his powers are reduced. I'm not too sure, just because I feel like when he went to do that, it felt like to me he was trying to do a mind control thing, not like a force push or something.
No, I'm
like
saying
that.
it's irrelevant what he was trying to do.
Yes.
Whatever he was trying to do, he couldn't.
Right.
And so that's why he looks at his hand, because he's like, what's going on here?
That's
That's not what I wanted to have happen.
I actually thought he looked at his hand and go like, am I that powerful now? Like he's only 50 apparently.
Yeah,
I was just like, oh, did I actually do that? And then he was like, hi, I'm your daddy.
I think he was like, what's going on here? But I mean, open to interpretation.
Oh,
There's
absolutely. Yeah.
I think if we're trying to even have any type of like tying this into anything that happened before in this series, they already talked about that they were going to extract stuff, and I feel like you might have to reckon with the fact that he doesn't have that ability right now, or maybe ever.
The things that tie together from chapter to chapter and the whole season is like very, very small, subtle things. So the idea is like, okay, yeah, we're back on this ship. I'm going to give you the ball to play with, just because I know you want it now, and like we're growing. Like that's the small little things that show us that it's tied together, which is really, really nice, but it's too small in some other capacities.
Right. Well, I mean, they can't really lean into it because,
of course,
as we've realized, that's not the show they're trying to do.
Of course.
So, yeah, I guess you're right that it can't be too oversweeping. It has to be small things like that, so we know. But I do feel like either way, that was something that Baby Yoda did not expect to happen, whether or not he was like, oh, am I that
correct
powerful, or if he was like, oh, nothing happened there. That's something else that I guess they can mine for content later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the whole like, God, just because I want to get to the slasher part of the thing. The slasher part of it was just so much fun to watch.
Yes,
every aspect of it, the whole like, oh, like the doors closing thing, we're gonna siphon you off. It's just such a
fun for me,
thing to watch.
I know they did it in Dark Knight Rises, and I'm sure they've done it elsewhere. But the whole flashes, and then you just see him coming closer.
Yeah,
loved it.
It's such that's what brought me back. I'm like, this feels like Batman again, where he's like doing the flash thing, and he's like,
anytime he's
so
like
good.
Batman, I'm down.
Yep.
Yeah, great episode. What else is there to talk about?
There's really not that much to talk about. The biggest thing I want to talk about though is the idea of the distress beacon that he activates, the pilot of the Republic, the New Republic.
Right. Yeah, with the guy that Bill Burr was like, nice shoes.
Yeah. I was genuinely wondering what the protocol is for that, because you arm a distress beacon or something like that. And then it seems like when Mando finally does the double cross at the very end, because it's like, no, you guys are going to try and screw me over. I know what's going to happen already. When he gives them the beacon thing, the X-Wings just show up and blow up everything right off the bat.
No, the dialogue is that it?
Right.
It looks like that's it. And then they're like, oh, they're arming a gunship. And so that's when they fire. When they're like, oh, this is where the signal's coming from, and they're arming a gunship. Let's get them.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I only caught that on the second time I watched it. But the first time I was like, well, I guess that worked out, because I was like, I would just assume the ship flying off is the bad guy.
Right.
But it was like, I guess they've got more sophisticated material to be like, oh, well, it's still there. It didn't fly past us.
Right.
And they're arming a gunship. They must be the ones that are doing the bad stuff. Yeah. And that's why they shot it.
Because they're really good timing on Mando's part, for sure.
Because they just shoot the ship, and that's what explodes.
Right. Oh, they don't actually take out the whole thing. They just take out
the space station,
docking bay,
wherever they are, would still be somewhat intact.
Gotcha. Right.
It's just they got what they perceive to be the actual threat.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It was just very weird to me that it didn't come from, like, they didn't recognize, like, hey, that's the distress beacon that was over there, and that it was like recognized specifically to that code of that ship or something like that. That it was like
but it was never on it was never on Mando's ship.
No, it wasn't. No.
So
what I'm saying
for
is,
them,
like,
they might have just been like, someone got. Well, I mean, why would you just shoot at it? But
exactly. But what I meant was the distress beacon. It was weird to me that it wasn't on the ship physically. It was like a dongle thing that he could carry around, which made it really, really weird to me. I'm like, why would that be the case if this is the situation? And then it could be transported. So I'm like, that was really, really weird, but it worked nonetheless. I mean, when I think about, like, why would that happen? Why would anyone design that distress beacon to be something like that? But that was my one small grip with the episode. It was just like, that.
It's a fair one.
Seemed to make a lot of sense, but okay.
To be clear, everybody listening, that is definitely stuff that I just go, meh.
Yeah.
Okay.
You kind of like, whatever, and I'm just kind of like, wait a minute.
Because I still don't really you just made it clear to me that it's a distress thing. I thought it was just straight up like they press this and then people will.
No, it's a distress
on the
signal.
ship will get you. I didn't realize it was like an external force. I was like, I'm checked out of this plot point. I don't care.
Gotcha.
I was get back to the Batmaning, baby.
Yeah. So, all around, very, very solid episode. I think one of the lines, too, back to the last line that Mando says in this episode, where he kind of goes to the Baby Yoda and goes like, see, I told you that was a bad idea. I thought that was a nice nod to the idea of, like, I've got a bad feeling about this, because it was just like, okay, I'm pretty sure that he probably says that before he gets on the ship, but doesn't actually show up in dialogue, and then this is their spin on it. It's like, hey, we're changing things a little bit around, especially things that are not canon, or like that was previously canon, but like from the meta side of things, like, you're not going to hear, I've got a bad feeling about this. You're going to hear, I told you that was a bad idea.
Yeah,
that was pretty funny to me.
I liked it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember what I wanted to say.
Sure.
The episode, I've got nothing. I don't know what's happening. I'm trying to bring back the thought I just had.
Yeah.
But I guess I wanted to hear from you. This has nothing to do with what I was about to say.
Right.
But were you upset that they didn't deal with that mysterious character that leaned down at the end of
No. Not
so
at
we're
all.
both on the same page of basically no one from the previous chapter will be in the next chapter unless like.
Well, the thing is, from all the promotional materials that I've seen, he sees Ming-Na Wen's character, Fennec, like in a totally different shot in some sort of cave as well. So I know Ming-Na Wen's character, Fennec, is not dead.
I meant more the Giancarlo Esposito thing.
Yeah. So the idea that they're just capping off, like, I just know that either episode 7 or 8, they're going to probably go back to Tatooine at some point because they have to. in order to find out who that character, the Mystic character, is. A lot of people keep saying it's Boba Fett. I'm like, I don't think that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I just like the most real. I think that's just like clickbait stuff from like Screen Rant or Comic Book Rant and stuff like that. I legit think I'm like, no, it's God, and I can't remember his name, but Gustavo Fring from
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yes, I just like it's got to be him. Like,
I agree with
why?
you.
Everyone's saying like, oh, it's like if you hear the sound effects, it's the same sound effects that Boba makes. I'm like, okay.
Oh, the Spurs?
Yeah, the Spurs. I'm just like, okay, but why?
So it could be a Mandalorian. Doesn't have to be that Mandalorian.
Exactly. Right.
And
we've all
a Mandalorian that clearly will show his face,
Yes.
if it is even a Mandalorian.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this chapter now. I just liked it. I guess I'm having the same trouble I had with his other chapter, where I'm like, it's very straightforward.
Yes.
It's just in this case, I really liked it. But it's the most self-contained. I feel like, I mean, maybe the Sanctuary chapter, because it really does this. But even in that Sanctuary chapter, it's kind of like, well, when are we going to see Card Luna again?
Right.
Like, they really are like setting up like, well, they'll have to cross paths. And this one actually feels like just a complete beginning, middle, and end, just the way Rick Famuyiwa's other chapter felt, like where it was like, well, they stole his parts, he got his parts back, he's off. Like, there's no real like, oh, what's gonna happen next? You're like, well, no, that's the end of that. And then this one is the same thing. Like, he gets betrayed, he gets them back in an amazing fashion, and then he's off. And there's literally no reason to ever see those characters again. I get that showing them in the prison means that like, because they're not dead. You know that he didn't kill them, and they can show up two seasons from now, next season. They can show up in the last episode. Yeah. But like, he's created a group of villains now. Like, we know that like if we see them again, we already know what their deal is.
Correct.
Cool. But this one feels so like and I like it. It's very satisfying. Yeah. It's just I'm like, but like, there's no real like, oh, like we got to dig into this or that. It's just like, yeah, like that's what happened, and it was great. Yeah,
no, it felt really, really fun as a self-contained episode. I don't think it adds anything to the overall season, but of course, I'm reserving judgment.
I do think it does, because I do think it's dealing with Baby Yoda realizing something's up. I feel like that's, as you said, there's always these small things, and I think that's a small but significant thing that happens in this chapter. Okay, because like Baby Yoda is legitimately like scared at a certain point. Like he goes to see Zero goes for the gun, he's like, oh fuck, and he's like hiding, like he's not like using the Force away. He's legitimately hiding. So that's the only reason I feel like he's like, oh, like this really isn't working out for me, because like he had multiple opportunities to just use it, and then but was hiding, and then it was only when he was cornered that he was like, well, let me give it a try, and it doesn't work. But
also I think like, I don't know, like it's hard to predict like what this character is doing at the age of 50, still being a child, right? It's just like, has he had enough, I guess, life experience to realize that not everyone is friendly, and is he figuring that out, or is he like young enough to always think that, oh, everyone's friendly and trying to help me to some degree or something like that?
I think he goes into it thinking everyone's friendly.
I think so,
but then by the time Zero reaches for the gun, he's like, oh, he's not friendly. Then but I do think you're right that he's young enough that he's just like, well,
there's an innocence.
But I feel like he would see that. Oh my god, he would see that Mando got into a fight with Hellboy and be like, maybe these guys aren't great,
right?
But maybe he's like, yeah, but he also doesn't like droids, and droids are great. So let me see what's going on here. I really liked the Xi'an character. Not that she did anything in particular good. It's just it was an interesting energy to have.
Yeah, it was a really, really interesting energy, because it's just like, okay, you guys, if you guys had a romantic past, then that does beg the question of like, did you ever take off your helmet?
No.
And
I guess
he's
like pretty serious about not doing it.
He's very serious about it, but it's just like, how did you have a romantic connection, if at all? Or maybe was it just really a one-sided thing where she was like, oh, I'm infatuated.
Because I don't think he ever said he liked her.
He never confirmed.
I think they probably, the way she mocked "This is the way," I feel like that spoke to
him not taking off the helmet.
Yeah, like, and her
During?
constantly being like, "What's?" Yeah, but like, just
Save sex, people.
I'm sure there was a bunch of conversations they had where
Yeah.
she was like, "Why aren't you giving me more out of this?" And
Probably.
he's like, "Well, this is the way."
Yeah.
And so I feel like, yeah, I feel like that's probably it. She's more resentfully mocking like how many times she's had to hear, "This is the way,"
Right.
enough that like you believe that she would use that as a line. Like that's clearly not just. He didn't just say that once and it affected. Like he probably said it all the time, and she was like, "Fuck this."
It's also like within the Mandalorian group that they have on that, like that last showdown with Carl Weathers and everything like that. They're all saying it too. So I guess that must be a mantra. So it's
It
just
is,
like, yeah.
but I feel like there's also characters like most characters in the show are always like, "Wait, you're a Mandalorian," and they're quite
Yes.
like they don't know intimate details about Mandalorians. She does, and that's why I was saying that. Like she would, like she actually spent time with him.
Yeah.
Whereas like Bill Burr is still like, "Oh, like, are you this or are you that?"
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Or but like the only thing he knows is most of them are killed off.
Yeah, it's kind of like the idea of like the whole universe forgetting about the Jedi. It's like, oh, I didn't know Jedi were real, kind of
Yeah.
thing. It was like I didn't know Mandalorians were real, and I like that one little quip that he had that was like really really dark humor. It's like, well, how good of fighters are they if they're all
Yeah.
dead, kind of thing. I was like, that's
I
an
like-
asshole-y move, but it's
Bill Burr,
tongue-in-cheek
baby.
fun. It's the dark humor of Bill Burr. I love it.
Yeah, I also really liked Mayfeld. I like about his like gun that operates almost on its
Oh,
own.
yeah, yeah.
Great.
The
Great
auto
stuff.
like gun that provides cover. 'Cause,
I honestly couldn't tell where he was at though, because like normally a character like his wouldn't have the line, "But what about your sister?"
Yeah.
Like when I should just explain what I'm talking about. When they capture, or they not capture, when they release Quinn, the brother.
Yep.
Like that's when Mando's kind of like get it on his warpath at that point, and he
Yep.
splits them up, and Quinn's just right away like, "You got a name? You're Mayfeld? Great, I'll triple your cut if you just like
Yep.
get us get out of here." And he's like, "Well, what about your sister?" And he's just
What
like,
about her?
"Yeah, what about her?"
Yeah.
He seems like he's not just an out and out bad guy. The way they really leaned into like,
It seems like he's more of a Han type character, where it's just like the moral compass is always moving where it should be, and that's what I really, really liked about Bill Burr's character.
yeah, he's just an
yeah.
interesting, like you can't pin him down, but like whereas like I looked it up so I could stop calling him Hellboy.
Yeah.
Berg and Jian are like, you're never like, maybe
Yeah.
maybe they won't screw him over. Like it's quite clear that like at the very least, Jian is gonna be like, "No, fuck this guy. Like
Yeah.
he left me on a planet to die."
Yes.
And Berg never makes any kind of like he's constantly antagonistic with him. So it was like interesting that they had the Mayfeld character who was just like, "Well, we're here to do a job. Like, why don't we just do the job and then we'll never see each other?" I know he knew that ultimately the plan was to screw over
Yes.
Mando, but I didn't think that he cared. He was just more like, "Well, this is actually my job, is to screw him over."
Yeah.
And it's not personal to him. Whereas it felt personal, obviously, for Jian, and Berg seemed to genuinely get pleasure out of doing it.
Yes.
Whereas, yeah, I just thought that was an interesting nuance to him. That like he does care about things, and he's the one that's like, "Let's just calm down." And like, I thought he was gonna like make fun of him more, but he's like, "No, like I also would care if someone was going through my personal stuff and like my personal space. Like, let's just all relax here and get the job done."
Yeah.
The only time that he seems like a bad guy is when he takes Baby Yoda and starts like pretending to drop Baby Yoda and stuff, and it seems menacing. But like, other than that, he seems obviously not a good guy, but he doesn't seem like a completely evil person
He's a
either.
scoundrel.
Yeah, he's a scoundrel. There you go.
He's a scoundrel is the best way to call him.
Fucking Berg, right?
I mean,
what a powerhouse. I also like when he basically does that like football move on one of the droids and like just slams it to the ground.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
like, I wouldn't watch a whole show of him. I would like to see more of
More
Berg doing
droid
like
battles.
if they gave him more to do throughout this episode, it would I wouldn't have been mad at it. It was just, but I get that they had to tease out just how strong he was, so that it was they showed you enough to know that like if Mando has to go one-on-one, it's gonna be a problem. But like they really showed how strong that guy was during the fight.
Yes,
and it was
they did.
great.
And even during the loading scene and everything like that, he's just lifting and hoisting up like
Yeah,
these
he's like,
giant like
believe
crates.
it or not, this guy's our muscle.
Yeah, which is why I'm like, I believe it. Like right
No,
away,
but
I
that's
believe it.
that's
It's,
a very
hilarious.
fun. I like that. Might be my
favorite line. That and
Right.
is that wise a user no want to show your face.
That's really funny too. Yeah, Phil Burr gets a lot of good lines in this one. He does.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else to say about this episode. I mean, like it's hard to talk about an episode that we both like so much. We're not
Yeah.
picking apart
There's no-
constantly.
There's no real like
There's no
questions
gripes with this. Yeah.
It's a very solid
Yep.
entry into this series. Obviously, I should go without saying I'm disappointed that they don't try to like connect everything, but it's week to week, as I said, I think on purpose.
Yes.
And they are doing more of like a Star Trek, like just whatever of the week type thing.
Sure.
So I'll just make peace with that. I won't bring it up ever again.
Right. Maybe we'll see a change in season 2. Who knows?
I doubt it.
We'll
I think
let
this
them-
is how you do longevity. I feel
Sure.
like if you do it this way, people aren't like, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I love shows that do season-long, series-long arcs, but
We're just not getting that.
it,
here.
like if you look at shows that have like 7+ seasons, they're not doing that.
Yep.
I mean, very rarely. Obviously, we can speak about Game of Thrones, but like, that's not the norm. The norm is that you just do like one, like every episode is its own thing.
Yes.
And people enjoy that. So here we are. Yeah, but you did want to like lay out, because obviously next
Yeah.
episode we won't be talking about The Mandalorian. Just a heads up.
No. Yeah, we're talking about the big one.
Yeah, we'll be ranking our reviewed movies for the year,
Yep.
which isn't the biggest list this time, but that's
No.
good because we'll have time to talk about episode 9.
Correct.
But that's what we'll be talking about, Rise of Skywalker next episode. But
Yes.
in preparation for that, Ben made a good point. You should probably lay out your theory again, just so
Yeah.
it's fresh in people's minds.
So this is where you heard it first. There's, to my knowledge, no Reddit theory or anything like that about this. This is purely from the insane brain that is housed in my head. It's the theory of who Rey actually is, and this theory is something I've worked on for a long, long time. And for the people that are like, get to the point. Basically, Rey is the reincarnation of Anakin, or the Chosen One in general. Now, the reason why I think that is because it's related back to the lightsaber scene in Episode 7, where basically she touches the lightsaber, she gets that flashback and all that kind of stuff. The reason why I think that is because every episode, every Star Wars movie, you learn something new about the Force, and the Force is very, very, very closely affiliated with Eastern philosophies and religions. One of the few ideologies that hasn't shown up yet is the idea of reincarnation. They talk about it a little bit, about the Darth Plagueis the Wise being able to manipulate midichlorians to make life, and that's what a lot of people theorize is the birth of Anakin, is Darth Sidious actually learning that and then doing that. But we'll never know, or the Force doing it. There's more evidence of the Force doing it than Darth Sidious doing it, because of the idea that the Force, if gave birth to the Chosen One in Shmi Skywalker, chose Anakin to be born in Tatooine, where outside of the reach of the Republic, because in the Republic, all babies go through a mandatory screening process to test whether or not they're Force sensitive, and if they are, they get removed from the family and put into the Jedi Academy and everything like that. So it's kind of like how China does a lot of screening for athletic talent early on in life, and then
Did not
just
know that.
puts that's what they did for like gymnastics and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't take away from the parents. It's just like, no, you have to do this because it's for China.
Right, they've
and all that kind of
chosen
stuff.
what you're going to be
So
focusing on.
yeah, the idea here lends on the idea of resurrection and reincarnation from Tibetan monks and the Dalai Lama. Essentially, every time the Dalai Lama dies, there is a possession that's held from the Dalai Lama's childhood, and brought and helped to identify the new Dalai Lama. So at the time of the Dalai Lama's death, after the proper grieving process, the Tibetan monks go through villages all over until they can find the new Dalai Lama. And the way they test it is they have this blanket that they put a whole bunch of just random stuff on that blanket for, and then one of those items is the previous Dalai Lama's possession as a child. The idea there is the new Dalai Lama will go directly towards that, because that item will call towards the Dalai Lama.
Right.
So that is the Rey theory about why it's Anakin, because during that scene, what you hear is the voices of old Obi-Wan, young Obi-Wan, and Yoda, as well as seeing snapshots from Cloud City or Mustafar, and being able to see all the things related to Skywalker. So Luke, as well as the Knights of Ren and all that kind of stuff, up until Rey being separated from her parents and all that kind of stuff. So the idea that the only character that has heard all three of the voices would be Anakin or Darth Vader, and the idea that the reincarnated theory like picks up on Luke's kind of memories as well, and then puts them into and then has them awaken in Rey, because that's at that point that's when everything stops and it goes into Rey. So I think Rey is the reincarnation of the Chosen One, or Anakin, and that's how they can actually continue this saga from going on. They can keep it going from the perspective of what I think is going to happen at the end of this is to tie together the whole trilogy, the whole saga, and the Clone Wars, and everything within this canon. They're going to bring it back to a place called Mortis, a planet called Mortis. Now, Mortis is deep in the Clone Wars TV show, and what it is it's basically the planet where the Force emanates from. And it's not a planet that just stays static. It just kind of floats around, does whatever it wants. Mm-hmm. There is a father, a son, and a daughter. The father resembles balance. The son resembles the dark side. And then the daughter resembles the light side. What I think is going to happen is, at the end of all this, Rey is going to be resembling the daughter. And then what you're gonna have Kylo representing the dark side, and then you're gonna have Anakin, the Force ghost of Anakin, actually separate from that and then become the balance. Because in the Clone Wars, it was the father did tell Anakin, "You're the one that's supposed to replace me as the bringer of balance," because the idea of the Chosen One was not to be aligned with the Sith or the Jedi, but to create the idea of what balance looks like, because the Sith and the Jedi are two different extremes. So to tie that all together, now the reason why I think that is also there's more evidence to this is because in one of the TV spots, Rey is seen holding a dagger, and it's theorized that that's the dagger that they used to find the Death Star or everything like that. But that dagger, I think, is the dagger of Mortis, which is the weapon that is held by the father to keep the son and the daughter in line and all that kind of stuff. It gets kind of destroyed or in that episode, because basically that whole planet goes away, but we don't actually know what happened to it if Snoke actually, or I should say Palpatine, is controlling everything at this point in time, manipulating everything. So I think the Rey is the reincarnation of Anakin, or the Chosen One, and that will allow Disney to actually make more Star Wars sagas, because the idea of now, because this whole Skywalker saga revolved around the Chosen One being Anakin and then his bloodline. Now we know Jedi are not supposed to have children, so the idea of Rey being related to anyone else seems ridiculous to me. So this is, I think, a way that Disney is going to be able to use this to establish new characters and just, this is the new Chosen One, this is the new Chosen One, over and over and over again, until they can get whatever they want out of it. So that's my theory. Well before, basically 5 days before Episode 9 comes out, which I'm
when this
stupidly
comes
excited
out
for.
When this comes out on Monday,
It'll be like 3 days, 3-4 days.
If you're watching it on Thursday.
Yeah, we're recording on Saturday.
So
that's my long-winded theory as to who Rey is, because it tracks well with what Rian Johnson did in Episode 7, Episode 8, where he says like, where Kylo basically says your parents were nobodies; they were alcoholics that sold you off or whatever. Like, that makes sense to me if, for example, they were just like, okay, we didn't actually. It was the same kind of birth process that Shmi Skywalker did. There was no actual insemination. There was just the Force happened and made the Immaculate Birth, and then at that point we're just like, yeah, you know what, we're not really attached to this kid, we don't know who it is and all that kind of stuff, so we're gonna leave and just leave the kid behind. So and on Jakku as well, on the Outer Rim territories, where it was far away from the New Republic, as well as this I guess the First Order and all that kind of stuff. So it tracks well with me, that's what my theory is, and let's hope I'm accurate, because the first thing you're going to hear out of the Episode 9 episode of this podcast will be, Ben was right, if I was in fact right. Not the first thing. We do our intro. That's pretty solid.
And
right
we're going to
now.
be ranking. I mean, you can do it whenever you want if you want.
Oh yeah. But I'm gonna be saying it. It's gonna be so hard to not say like Ben was right. And if I was right, then please please tweet at Disney. Tell them I should be one of the writers for Star Wars. It'll be good times.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
So there it is. That's the theory.
Huge
So
theory.
sorry, you kept saying she's the incarnation of Anakin or the Chosen One. Is that
Yep.
are you distinguishing that that's two separate people?
It could be. Essentially, it could be. Because the issue is, like, every other character from the original trilogy. So Obi-Wan has had some effect in this. Yoda clearly has a role in Episode 8, and shows that in Episode 8, that even as a Force ghost, you can use the Force to manipulate the physical world. So Anakin could be doing that from beyond, and that's why I think could be in Rey. But then after the battle, or the final battle with Palpatine or whatever, I think they might just separate at that point and be like, okay, Anakin's really this person, or Rey is this new person, and then they have someone else being the light. Or that's what they go off and try to find that balance. I don't know. But that's how I think they can continue doing this, because I don't think Disney's going to kill off Rey or Kylo, even though they're not going to do... Well, the three, Boyega, Ridley, and Isaac, they're not going to do any more Star Wars after this.
Right.
Unless they all return, which is highly unlikely.
No.
Yeah.
They could kill Rey.
They could. I mean, I doubt they would, but they could. I mean, it's more that she would sacrifice herself more than before anything else. But
And even if she can use the Force, she can just be a Force ghost. It won't really mean.
yeah, because the whole idea is, if they do that, the Mortis theory, then what happens is they truly did bring balance to the Force. Because what happens in Clone Wars is, because the father dies, the son and the daughter, the Force is unbalanced, and that's what leads to Anakin going bad.
Got it.
In many, many ways. I mean, because the idea of Anakin going bad to the dark side is truly, okay, yeah, you're really a balanced Force user at that point. You've studied Jedi code and you've studied Sith code. You understand both, and that's what balance is supposed to be. You understand both sides of the Force.
It'd be interesting to see if that's where they go, because I feel like your theory really leans into knowing Clone Wars stuff.
Yes.
Which
is going to be hard for a lot of people to
I
digest.
don't think they deal in that. I feel
They
like
don't, but it also looks like it does from some of the promotional clips. I mean, in some of the promotional clips, it looks like they're...
I'm not
in
saying...
a completely
I don't
different
know if
space
you're right or
altogether.
wrong.
Yeah.
I just know that
It's
would
a
be an
lot.
interesting choice,
Yeah.
because you would basically be like hoping that people retroactively are aware of the intricacies of Clone Wars,
Yes.
which isn't the best plan if you're trying to hit all
No,
the
because
whole audience.
what would happen is, ultimately Anakin would have to explain the whole thing,
Yes,
and
that's what I'm
then
saying.
that
That's
would
a big
as a monologue to the audience and to Rey and to Kylo, if that was the case, and that would be a bit of a lull, because that clearly would happen in the third act.
yeah. He would have to.
Yeah.
That's the problem with information dumps like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's where you're admitting to the audience,
Mm-hmm.
like, listen, like, yeah, there's no way we could just film this and you get the
You pick
information.
it
I'm
up,
just gonna
yeah.
have to say it out.
We have
right
to say
now.
it, yeah. And that's the theory, and that's something I could see JJ doing, because he's like, yeah, he understands that this episode, this final episode in the saga, is supposed to tie together everything.
Yes, I would just
all nine,
also
yeah.
interesting only because he's also a director that is a good like mimic,
Yes.
but like of movies that came before. So I don't know what he would be mimicking if he did. That would actually have him having to be like, oh, I've got
Putting
this
in
like,
original ideas and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, still riffing off of stuff that
course.
came before, but like, there's no like template for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's him having to like extend an idea into that fully
Yes.
formed movie. I'm not saying he can't do it. It's just usually not what he does.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him coming in as them being like, well, I know they asked Ryan Johnson, but I also saw them being like, thank goodness JJ's back, because
Yeah. because, well, now
he's the
it's-
safer choice of like what
Yeah.
will be a crowd pleasing thing,
Yes.
and less what will be this deep cut thing that like
Mm-hmm.
rewards all the stuff that came before. But we'll find out. I also saw that the same guy that wrote Batman vs Superman wrote this movie, so
Oh,
that'll be Chris Terrio. Oof.
yeah, that's
I liked Argo. I can't say I didn't like that, but yeah, I was not a fan of. I get that a lot of what he did in Batman vs Superman, and obviously Justice League was stripped out, so I don't know what he's like in that capacity. But I feel like actually him being the writer might actually lead to you being right, because that seems like a lot of like intricate stuff being put together that maybe doesn't land well for everyone.
Yeah, I think the thing with episode 9 is it's definitely not going to be a movie where you could just like sit down and watch. You need to know the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's why like I have 2 tickets opening night on the 19th, 2 tickets on 20th, and 2 tickets on the 21st. The 19th I'm going with my mom because that's like our, believe it or not, tradition. She loves Star Wars too, which is great because it's D-box seats.
Awesome.
And then Thursday I'm going with Laura, and I mean Friday I'm going with Laura, and I told her, I'm like, we have to watch all 9 episodes. We have to watch all 8 episodes before we watch this, because I'm not sitting next to someone and go like, who's that? Who's that?
Right.
Who's that? The entire
Well,
time.
you better get on that.
Yeah.
Or have you started already?
Oh, we're at episode 8 now. We just
Okay.
got to watch 8 and then we're good to go.
I'm at 7 right now.
Yeah. It's good, man.
Well, I was
It
watching-
so good.
It's not too many more, but I also watched Solo and Rogue One.
Yeah, we did not watch
yeah, that's
the
fine.
anthology stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, for someone bringing through the first time,
Yeah. So that's good. That's that, because the main idea is this episode was this chapter was my favorite.
yeah.
The Prisoner, it's great. It's got a bunch of different tropes in it. Hopefully you like those tropes. If you don't, you're out of luck.
Yeah. I liked
And-
it. I'm reserving judgment until chapter 7 and 8 come out, so I can.
Well,
pick
yeah,
my
no,
favorite
we're
one,
not talking
for sure.
about the season as a whole. I'm saying this was a good chapter.
I understand. I'm still doing that. I'm still reserving.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good. I still liked it a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So if you want more great podcasts like this, go to thatshelf.com. There's things like Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Composers. It's a whole bunch of stuff. No Budget Nightmares. That's a great theme song. Just dive in. It's great. And if you want to hear more episodes from us, we're on That Shelf, obviously, but we're also on tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten, where you'll get from episode 1 till now, and every episode in perpetuity or something like
yeah.
that. It's going to be great if you do that. And also, once you're there, please follow us on Twitter at TDFSpoiled. Follow Ben and I on our various social media stuff.
Yep.
You can email us at spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. You can rate, review, subscribe, and share on Google Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Radio Public, all those good places. Please go ahead and do it.
Yep.
Thank
And
you very
check
much.
out the Indiegogo for Deathmatch Dad.
Yes, do that. I remind people at the beginning, but it's good to have a nice little Indiegogo sandwich of me at the beginning, you at the end. All right. Thank you very much for listening. And don't forget, next time you hear us, we'll be talking about Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, not The Mandalorian.
Yep.
That will be the week after. We'll double up. All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.